Usually when we talk about the future, we use language that it kind of makes it sound like we're navigating a pitch black room.
Oh, totally. Like we're completely blind.
Right. We talk about like stumbling upon opportunities, or we just hope things work out for the best.
Yeah, we try to guess what comes next based on, whatever's directly right in front of us.
Exactly. It's a completely reactive posture.
It really is. It's the linguistic equivalent of just crossing your fingers. Like, we treat the future like the weather.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, we might check the forecast, we might carry an umbrella, but ultimately we just accept that we have to stand in the rain. Or, enjoy the sun. We're just at the mercy of the elements.
Well, what if you could treat the future less like the weather and more like architecture?
Right.
What if, instead of just crossing your fingers and bracing for impact, you could actually mathematically graph your future before you even live it?
Which sounds crazy, but
It does. Yeah. But welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today, we're skipping all the basic introductory fluff. We're not going to talk about, basic habit tracking or morning routines.
no, definitely not.
We are venturing to the absolute bleeding edge of a framework known as Meta-Matics.
Which I know is a heavily intimidating term right out of the gate.
It sounds very dense.
It does.
Yeah.
But the underlying concept is just incredibly profound, and more importantly, it completely changes how you interface with reality.
So the mission for today's deep dives is to decode the architecture of futures.
Yep.
We're going to look at topological mapping, multidimensional graphing from what's called Chapter Y, and then we're going to immediately ground all of that high-level theory.
Because the theory is thick.
Right. We're going to ground it using practical templates and equations from Chapter Z's practice manual. We're talking about a system that uses pseudo-algebraic equations to literally map conceptual reality.
Yeah.
And I know the phrase pseudo-algebraic equations of reality, that sounds like a dense sci-fi novel.
Or like an advanced calculus class that you immediately want to drop.
Exactly. But okay, let's unpack this, because as we go through it, you'll see this is actually the most grounded, actionable system for transitioning from being a passive user of your life to the active architect of it.
And that distinction between the user and the architect, that is just the perfect place to start.
Walk us through that.
Okay, think about how a user interacts with a piece of software. A user just clicks through the menus that are already provided by someone else. Right.
Yeah, you just accept the default settings.
Exactly. If a notification pops up, they react to it. They are operating entirely within the parameters set by an unseen creator.
Right.
But an architect actually accesses the back-end code. They design the interface itself. They decide why that notification even exists in the first place.
So they're building the environment, not just living in it.
Exactly. And the visual foundation of this Meta-Matics system, the tool that actually lets you see and manipulate that back-end code of your own life, it's called the root square chart.
And just to paint a picture for you listening, this is not your standard corporate flowchart.
Oh, no.
If you're imagining like a hierarchy of boxes with little arrows pointing down to smaller boxes, throw that out.
Throw it entirely out. It's a recursively drawn, multidimensional graph.
Right.
Its sole purpose is to visually conceptualize the existence and the mechanics of a system. And what's really fascinating here is the precise geometry of it.
Because it's very specific.
It is. It doesn't begin with a linear list. It begins with one massive central square. That is your root square.
So the root square is essentially the absolute center of gravity for whatever concept or, life domain or project you were trying to map.
Correct.
So I'm mapping my career, the root square is my career.
Exactly. It's the core anchor.
Yeah.
Now, imagine extending outward from each of the four corners of this central root square.
Right, 4 corners.
Right. Attached to these corners are 4 smaller squares, which are called branch squares. And the geometry here is highly specific. Each branch square is exactly 1/4 the size in both height and length of the root square.
Okay, let me just visualize this.
Yeah.
So if I took all 4 of those branch squares and sort of packed them together,
Yeah.
they would perfectly equal the exact dimensions of the root square.
Geometrically, yes. But here's the crucial detail, and this is really where the map becomes active rather than static.
Okay.
These branch squares, they don't just touch the corners of the root square edge to edge, they actually overlap it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and they don't just overlap randomly based on how someone drew it. They overlap the root by exactly 1/8 of their total area.
Wow, okay. I want to pause on that 1/8 overlap, because when I was first looking at the visual graphs in the source material, that overlap just looked like a sleek design choice.
Right, like an aesthetic thing.
Yeah, like a modern Venn diagram you see in, I don't know, a startup pitch deck.
Yeah.
But this 1/8 overlap is actually the secret engine of the whole chart, isn't it?
It's the defining feature of the entire architecture. This is what the framework calls the fourth quarter principle.
The fourth quarter principle. Okay, break that down.
Let's look at the anatomy of a branch square. Because it overlaps the root square, a branch square has 3 corners sticking out into free space.
Right.
These are called free corners. Now, these free corners eventually expand into smaller conceptual units called leaves, which then expand further into even smaller units called fruits.
It's recursive, right, like a fractal.
Exactly. And if you were to map the entire recursive structure out, you get 12 free corners, or leaves, across the branches and 36 fruits.
That's a lot of little squares.
It is. But that overlapping section, that 1/8 of shared real estate where the branch physically embeds into the root,
Yeah.
that mathematically represents the space where concepts actively integrate.
Oh, I see. So it's not a puzzle piece fitting perfectly into a pre-cut slot.
No, not at all.
It's more like a chemical reaction where the two pieces melt into each other. The overlap is the physical action of assembling them.
Precisely. Let's use an analogy to really ground this. Think about a standard electrical plug and a wall outlet.
Okay, I've got the plug, I've got the outlet.
Right. You have the plug, you have the outlet, and let's say you also have this deep intellectual knowledge of how electricity works.
Okay.
Those 3 elements are static. They are your 3 fruits. They represent 75% of the equation.
But nothing is actually happening yet.
Right. The final 25%, that 1/8 overlap in the graph, is the willful, active act of bridging them together.
Oh, it's the physical motion of pushing the plug into the outlet.
Exactly. So the electricity actually flows. 3 static elements, plus the active overlap of integrating them, is what creates a functional leaf. The overlap is the lived practice.
Okay, so let me apply this. If my root square is my health, right?
Yeah.
One of the branch squares might be my diet.
Perfect.
So the 3 free corners of that diet square might be my meal plan, my grocery budget, and my nutritional knowledge. But if those just sit out in free space, I'm not actually healthy.
Exactly. You just have a lot of paperwork.
Right. The 1/8 overlap is me physically chopping the vegetables and eating the meal, which actually integrates diet into health.
That is a perfect translation. The map visually forces you to see where you have knowledge just hanging out in free space and where you're actually lacking the integrative overlap to make it real.
It reminds me of, like, a skyscraper's scaffolding.
Oh, yeah.
It's highly structured, load-bearing, and perfectly engineered to support growth. But I do have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Does mapping our messy, unpredictable, highly emotional lives on a recursive 2D geometric plane, does that oversimplify what it actually means to be alive?
I mean, that's a fair point.
Because we aren't just rigid shapes on a board, you know? Life is chaotic.
That is a very valid critique. And honestly, if the map were truly flat, it would be a fatal flaw.
Okay.
A flat 2D map is insufficient for human complexity, which is exactly why the architecture introduces a concept called dimensional homonymy.
Dimensional homonymy. Okay, let me think about that word.
It's a mouthful.
A homonym in language is a word that sounds the same but has different meanings, right? Like the bark of a dog versus the bark of a tree.
Exactly.
So how does that translate to dimensions on a map? Are we saying the square is playing 2 roles at once?
That's exactly it. It means the graph isn't actually flat. It just looks flat on paper because of the medium.
Because it's printed on a page.
Right. In reality, it represents multiple dimensions existing in the exact same space. The architecture explains that pieces and purpose make up one expression of the concept.
Okay, pieces and purpose.
Right. While presence and proximity make up the second expression.
So they occupy the same geometric space, but they mean entirely different things.
Like the bark of a dog and the bark of a tree.
Okay, this feels a bit abstract. Let's ground this. What are the actual mechanism of this dimensional homonymy?
Think of a symphony orchestra.
Okay, I'm picturing the stage, the musicians, the instruments.
Right. The physical instruments, the violins, the cellos, the brass section, those are the pieces.
Got it.
The sheet music sitting on the stands, the actual composition they're trying to play, that is the purpose.
Okay.
But if you just have pieces and purpose sitting on an empty stage, you don't have music.
Right, you just have dead wood, cold brass, and paper.
Exactly. You have the potential for music, but no actual sound.
So how do we get the sound?
To make it functional, to actually generate the reality of music, you have to saturate those pieces and purpose with the second dimension. presence and proximity.
Oh.
Presence is the breath of the musicians, the physical movement of the bows, the real-time human attention.
Proximity.
Proximity is the acoustic resonance of the hall. It's the way the sound waves bounce off the walls and interact with each other in that shared space.
Wow.
When you combine the first dimension, pieces and purpose, with the second dimension, presence and proximity, in the exact same space, the shadow of the concept becomes a functional reality.
That makes so much sense. It's mapping the hardware and the software, or like the potential and the kinetic energy all at the same time.
Exactly. It's a topological map of how your intentions interact with your environment and your real-time actions.
But, just staring at a geometrical map, even a multidimensional one, is only the first step.
Sure.
Because the blueprint is useless if you can't read the architect's symbols.
Right?
We need the language.
We do.
This means we have to translate this visual topological map into linguistic mathematical equations.
Yeah.
We need a way to not just see the orchestra, but to actually write the sheet music.
And this brings us to the core mechanism of Meta-Matics, the pseudo-algebraic concept mapping system.
Okay, here we go.
This is where we start doing the math.
Math with words. Math with life experiences.
Math with concepts, yeah. The system uses mathematical operators to map conceptual relationships rather than numerical values.
Okay.
The foundational format for an equation in this system looks like this: A over B, then a synthesis operator, then C over D.
Okay, let me visualize that for everyone listening. That's an A over a B, followed by a plus sign inside a circle.
Yep, the synthesis operator.
Followed by a C over a D.
Exactly.
If I'm looking at that like a high school algebra problem, it just looks like fractions being added together.
Right?
But these aren't numerical fractions. Let's break down the variables. If A and C are on the top, what do they represent?
A and C are called iterators.
The iterators.
Yes, they represent the content. This is the raw material, the intrinsic skills, the energy, the desire, or the specific action that you are bringing to the table.
So if the iterator is the fuel, I'm guessing B and D on the bottom are the engine block shaping the explosion.
Oh, I like that, yes.
Like the roadblocks or the environment I'm forced to operate in.
That's a great way to look at it. B and D are the delineators. They represent the context.
Delineators?
Right. They are the filters, the environments, the cultural norms, or the structural constraints that shape and contain your iterator.
Okay, so that slash symbol, the division sign between the iterator A and the delineator B, it doesn't mean divide A by B mathematically.
No. In Meta-Matics, the division symbol means filtered by or expressed through.
Okay, so A over B means your raw material, your iterator, is being filtered by your environment, your delineator.
Exactly.
It's the friction. It's the reality that my raw ambition doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists inside a specific corporate structure or, specific marriage.
Yes, it's always contextualized.
And what about that other symbol, the plus sign inside a circle?
That is the synthesis operator. It means integrated with.
Integrated with.
Right. It shows how two complete relationships, like your A over B relationship and your C over D relationship, fuse together to create a completely new emergent system.
Okay.
And we should also mention the asterisk, the standard multiplication symbol.
What does that pop up to?
It does. In this language, multiplication doesn't just mean adding things together rapidly. It represents synergistic amplification.
Amplification.
Yeah, it means exponential growth, where two things reciprocally strengthen each other in a feedback loop.
I know we're throwing a lot of abstract symbols around here, but there is a really fascinating connection to linguistics in the source material that made this click for me.
Oh, the Chomsky connection.
Yeah. Think about Noam Chomsky's theory of universal grammar.
Yes, the parallels are striking. And they're intentional.
Explain that for the listener.
So Chomsky's theory argues that all human language is built on a universal grammar.
Right.
Underneath English, Mandarin, Swahili, there's this universal scaffolding, certain innate cognitive principles combined with domain-specific variations, which are the actual vocabularies of those specific languages. Yeah. Meta-Matics argues the exact same thing for lived experience. It says that human reality has a universal grammar.
So conceptual mastery equals universal operators like your plus, minus, multiply, divide, and synthesis symbols combined with domain-specific variables, which are just the specific details of your life.
Exactly. The math operators are the universal grammar. The specific things happening at your job or in your home are the domain-specific vocabulary.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's write a literal equation for psychological state so we can see how this universal grammar works.
Let's do it.
Let's map out a scenario. Imagine waking up on a Tuesday morning. You sit at your desk, you look at your laptop, and you just feel entirely suffocatingly stuck at work.
We've all been there.
Usually in that moment, what do? We use incredibly imprecise language. We say, I feel bad today, or I'm unmotivated, or I hate my job.
And we internalize it. We blame ourselves.
Exactly. But let's map it using the pseudo-algebra. The equation for this moment might look like this. Curiosity over support. Synthesis symbol. Time over engageability.
Okay, let's translate that using our operators and see the diagnostic power of this map. Let's look at the first fraction. Curiosity over support. Your curiosity, which is your iterator, your raw content, your desire to learn and explore, is being filtered by the support you have in your environment, which is your delineator.
So my curiosity is being filtered by, say, my micromanaging boss.
Precisely. And that entire relationship is then integrated with, that's the synthesis operator, your time, which is your second iterator.
Right.
Filtered by how engaging the task is, the engageability, your second delineator.
This is where the power of this architecture becomes undeniable for me.
Right.
By mapping this out, I can run a surgical diagnostic on my Tuesday morning misery. I might look at the equation and realize, wait a minute, my iterator, my curiosity is actually perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I am a curious person. I want to solve problems. But my delineator, the support from my boss, is practically zero. It is completely throttling my curiosity.
Exactly. The problem isn't you. It's the mathematical relationship between your content and your context. You aren't unmotivated. Your motivation is being improperly filtered.
Or maybe I look at the second half of the equation. My time iterator is abundant. I have 40 hours a week to dedicate to this project.
Right.
But the engageability of the project, the delineator, is terrible. It's mindless data entry.
Yeah, it's crushing your time.
By identifying the exact variables, I move from this vague, heavy sense of frustration to surgical precision. I know exactly what knob on the soundboard needs to be turned. I don't need to fix my curiosity. I need to change my support structure.
That is the exact shift from user to architect.
Wow.
A user just feels the frustration and quits the app. The architect opens the equation, isolates the exact variable causing the crash, and rewrites it.
But knowing which knob to turn is one thing, right? Actually, rewiring the board is another. Diagnosing the problem on a Tuesday morning is great.
Yeah.
But how do I fix it?
Right, the application phase.
Yeah, identifying the variables is merely the diagnostic phase. To actually solve these equations and architect a new reality, we have to open Chapter Z's practice manual.
Yes, we have to transition into the practical application.
And Chapter Z provides the exact templates to rewrite the code, doesn't it?
It does. This is where the theory becomes relentlessly, almost aggressively practical.
I love that.
The practice manual isn't just about philosophy. It provides over 50 pre-built equations and templates. It gives you the exact formulas to rewrite the code of your life so you can design futures intentionally rather than just reacting to the weather.
Let's dive deep into some of these specific templates because this is the real toolkit.
Yeah.
Let's start with what the manual calls the integration equation.
Okay, the integration equation.
The formula is achievement equals orientation times consistency, all divided by resistance.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that equation. First, look at the numerator, the top part of the fraction. Orientation times consistency.
Okay.
Orientation is your heading. It's the active practice of aligning your daily behaviors with your specific target to reach your goal.
So if my goal is to run a marathon, my orientation is ensuring my training plan is actually designed for long-distance endurance, not just, like, sprinting.
Right. It's pointing the compass in the correct direction. But notice the mathematical operator next to it. It is multiplication.
Right. Orientation times consistency.
You are multiplying your orientation by your consistency. Why multiplication and not simply addition? Because consistency introduces compounding effects.
Oh, right. If I run 3 miles today and 3 miles tomorrow, I haven't just added 6 miles to my body. The cardiovascular adaptation compounds.
Exactly. A single day of proper orientation has a linear, limited impact. But sustained orientation over many days multiplies your progress. It's synergistic amplification.
The habit groove gets deeper.
Yes. The neuroplasticity strengthens. That is why it's a multiplier.
And then, importantly, that entire top section orientation multiplied by consistency is divided by resistance.
Because achievement is always moderated by friction.
Always.
Dividing by resistance is a mathematical acknowledgement that gravity exists. The friction of reality, whether that's external obstacles like a lack of money or internal obstacles like profound self-doubt or trauma, will always act as a filter.
It pushes back.
It will reduce your gross effort down to your net achievement.
It is brilliantly simple when you see it laid out like that. If I want to increase my achievement in any area, I really only have two mathematical levers I can pull.
Yep.
I can either increase the numerator, get more consistent, and ensure my orientation is dead on, or I can decrease the denominator, which means removing the resistance and friction in my environment.
Exactly.
If I'm trying to write a book, instead of just trying to grind harder and increase my consistency, maybe I just need to lower my resistance by putting my phone in another room so I'm not distracted.
You adjust the environment to serve the equation.
Right.
And the manual goes even deeper into human complexity with the relational transformation equation.
Oh, this one is fascinating.
It really is, because it proves mathematically that profound personal growth isn't a solo endeavor.
Let's talk about this one in detail. The formula for relational output is complex. It has a lot of moving parts. But the most vital piece of the engine is the variable r, the relational multiplier.
The formula for R is 1 plus the product of attunement, safety, and mutual visibility.
Attunement times safety times mutual visibility.
Yes.
This immediately raises a profound question for me. Why does the presence of another human being accelerate our own internal transformation?
It's a great question.
Because we constantly hear about doing the work on ourselves by ourselves. Self-care, journaling in a quiet room. But this math says otherwise.
The math explains exactly why isolation limits transformation. Let's break down the variables of R.
Okay.
Attunement is how accurately the other person perceives your internal state. Do they actually see what you are feeling, or are they projecting your own stuff onto you?
Right.
Safety is the lack of judgment and the presence of nervous system regulation. And mutual visibility is the shared, active space of seeing and being seen simultaneously.
Let's apply this to a real-world scenario. Let's say a married couple is having a dispute.
Okay.
One partner comes home from work, clearly stressed out, and immediately snaps at the other over, like dish is left in the sink.
Okay, let's run the math on that exact moment. If the second partner has high attunement, they can perceive the underlying stress. They know it's not actually about the dishes.
Right.
But if safety is low, meaning they feel attacked and immediately get defensive, what happens to the R multiplier?
Well, because it's multiplication. If safety is near zero, the whole equation collapses. Anything multiplied by zero is zero.
Exactly. Even with high attunement, the lack of safety zeroes out the potential for transformation in that moment. It just becomes a fight.
It's just friction.
But imagine a scenario where all three variables are high. The partner sees the stress, that's attunement. They respond calmly and without judgment, that's safety. And they sit down together to actively discuss the underlying pressure, mutual visibility.
And when those three variables are high and they multiply each other, R skyrockets.
The transformation cascades. It proves that when two people share a highly attuned, safe field, their capacity to process stress or heal trauma doesn't just add together, it exponentially multiplies.
1 plus 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals 10.
That is the power of the relation multiplier. You cannot achieve that level of R alone in a room journaling.
Wow. And the manual also touches on business and systems with probabilistic modeling.
Yes, it shifts gears quite a bit there.
And I'll be honest, when I first saw this, it sounded like something an insurance actuary uses. The equation is project success equals the probability of tech risk times technical excellence plus the probability of resource risk times resource optimization. And it just goes on.
I know, it looks incredibly dry, but it's actually a blueprint for designing against failure.
Give me an example.
Let's say you are a startup founder. You're deciding whether to launch a flawed software product right now or wait 6 months to perfect it.
A classic dilemma, speed versus perfection.
Right. If you use the probabilistic modeling equation, you don't just go with your gut, you map it. You calculate the probability of tech risk. What are the odds the software crashes upon launch? Let's say it's 40%. You multiply that by your technical excellence, which is your team's ability to fix a crash in real time. Then you map the probability of resource risk. What are the odds you run out of funding if you delay for 6 months? Let's say that's 80%.
So suddenly, the math makes the decision for you.
Exactly.
The risk of delaying and running out of money at 80% far outweighs the risk of launching a buggy product that your excellent team can patch on the fly at 40%.
Exactly. You are visually mapping risk before the risk even materializes.
Right.
All of these templates in the practice manual, from integration to relationships to probabilistic modeling, they're all designed to force a massive paradigm shift in the user.
And the text has a specific name for this shift, right?
Yes. The overarching goal is described as moving from an R1V life architecture to an AV1 life architecture.
Okay. R1V. That stands for responsive variable. Let's unpack the mechanics of living an R1V life.
In an R1V life architecture, the external world is the constant. The world, the environment, your boss, your family expectations, they are the one in the equation.
Oh.
And you.
Yeah.
You are just the V, the reacting variable, the world acts, and you respond.
You are defined by external markers.
Entirely. Your career trajectory, your emotional state, your physical health, they are all dictated by external pressures.
You're just waiting around.
You wait for the right opportunity to appear before you move. You twist and adjust your own skills to match whatever job posting happens to be available. You are just a variable responding to constant demands of the world.
Let me give you a really grounded analogy for this, because I think everyone listening has felt this at some point.
Please do.
Living an R1V life is like being a passive guest in a completely automated smart home.
Okay.
But the catch is, the smart home is running on legacy software scripts that were written when you were a teenager or based on traumas you experienced years ago.
Ooh, yeah.
So the lights turn off randomly, the alarm blares when you're just trying to sleep, the thermostat drops to freezing whenever you try to be vulnerable with someone.
Right.
And because you are living R1V, you are just sitting on the couch, pulling a blanket over yourself, reacting to the environment, thinking, well, I guess it's just cold in here now, nothing I could do.
That is exactly what an automated trauma response or a deeply ingrained limiting habit feels like. You feel like the victim of your own internal environment.
Right. But using these equations, using the practice manual, that is like finally finding the laptop, logging into the admin backend of the smart home, and rewriting the code for the thermostat.
Yes.
You aren't just putting on a sweater anymore. You are reprogramming the environment to serve your intent. You transition to the AV1 life.
The autonomous one.
Autonomous one.
In this architecture, you flip the equation. You become the constant, your internal anchoring, your core values, your defined target that is the one.
And the world.
The external world becomes the variable that responds to you. You don't twist yourself to fit a job posting. You anchor into your skills and force the environment to yield an opportunity that fits your target.
It is the ultimate shift from victimhood to agency.
It is.
But wait, I have to push back here.
Okay.
And I think anyone listening who has dealt with an overbearing boss or a narcissistic partner is probably thinking the exact same thing.
What's that?
If the ultimate goal is to always be the autonomous one, to always be the constant driving the variables, always forcing the environment to bend to our will, doesn't that just turn us into rigid control freaks?
I see what you mean.
Like if I'm always asserting my will over my partner or my coworkers or my environment, I'm going to become completely disconnected from reality. I'll be a tyrant in my own life.
That is a brilliant observation, and it is the exact trap that a lot of superficial self-help falls into.
Right. This hustle culture idea of always dominate your reality.
Yes. But Meta-Matics recognizes that perpetual dominance is just as dysfunctional and ultimately just as fragile as perpetual submission.
Oh, thank goodness. So how does it solve that?
To solve this, the system introduces what might be its most crucial failsafe: the unity operator and a diagnostic mechanic called the inversion kick.
This is where the math gets intensely psychological. Let's break down the unity operator. What does the number 1 actually represent in this context?
The unity operator is represented by the number 1, but you have to stop thinking of 1 as a numerical value representing a single item.
Okay.
In Meta-Matics, 1 denotes the position of the self. It represents your focal agency inside an expression.
So it's a marker for where I am physically located in the equation.
Exactly. Let's go back to our fraction format. If you write an equation as x over 1 with the variable x on top and the 1 on the bottom, that translates to I use x.
I use x.
You are the iterator. You are managing the variable from a position of agency. You are in the driver's seat.
Okay, so if x is time management, x over 1 means I am actively managing my time. I am imposing my schedule. I am driving.
Correct. But if you flip the fraction and write 1 over x, that translates to x uses me.
X uses me.
You are yielding. You are consciously letting the variable act as the delineator that shapes you.
Wait, yielding? Isn't yielding exactly what we were trying to escape when we left the R1V reactive life? I thought yielding was bad.
Yielding is only destructive if it is unconscious and involuntary.
Ah, involuntary.
Conscious yielding is actually a vital form of high-level mastery.
Give me an example of conscious yielding.
Think about being in a flow state while surfing, or playing music, or listening deeply to a partner who is grieving.
Right.
If you are constantly trying to control the interaction, if you are always x over 1, you can never truly connect, you can never be inspired, and you will eventually snap under the pressure of having to control everything.
That makes total sense.
Sometimes you must actively choose to let the wave or the music or the intimacy shape you. That is conscious 1 over x.
Okay, that is a massive distinction. So the position of 1 shows whether I'm consciously driving, which is x over 1, or consciously yielding, 1 over x.
Yes.
But how does knowing this prevent me from becoming that rigid control freak we talked about?
Through the mechanism of the inversion kick.
The inversion kick.
The practice manual explicitly demands that a healthy architecture cannot stay in one mode permanently. To test if your life is structurally balanced, the system uses an architectural equation that tests for symmetry.
Now, the manual provides this massive, intimidating string of brackets and fractions for the inversion kick.
Oh, it's a huge equation.
It's got curly brackets, square brackets, parentheses, dividing by inverted versions of itself. I'm not going to read it out loud because it would sound like I'm reading a computer manual.
No, please don't.
But what is that giant equation actually physically doing to my life?
The math looks intimidating, but its function is beautiful. Think of it as a mathematical mirror. It is a stress test for your psychology.
A stress test.
Let's look at just the first piece of the logic. It asks you to encode your current baseline state. For example, I wield variable A, but I yield to variable B.
I drive one thing, but I let another thing shape me.
Yes, that is your baseline. But the inversion kick requires that after you establish that baseline, you must test the exact opposite. You have to multiply that state against its inversion. You have to force yourself into the state of I yield to A, but I wield B. The equation forces you to strategically flip your modes to see if your life architecture breaks under the pressure.
Let's put this into a concrete scenario so we can see the inversion kick in action.
Sure.
Let's say variable A is my career and variable B is my intimate relationship at home.
Okay.
Let's say my baseline is that I always use x over 1 at work. I am iterator first, driving, controlling, managing my team with an iron fist.
Right.
And let's say I always use 1 over x at home. I am delineator first, yielding, underasserting, just going along with whatever my partner wants to avoid conflict.
So your system is fundamentally asymmetric. You are an autocrat at the office and a doormat in your living room.
Right. And a lot of people live their entire lives like that until they have a breakdown or a divorce.
Yep.
But the inversion kick is the diagnostic tool to catch that asymmetry before the system crashes. It forces me to ask, what happens if I apply the inversion kick? What happens if I yield at work? Can I accept critical feedback from a subordinate? Can I let the team's wisdom shape the project?
Then what happens if you drive at home? Can you assert your boundaries? Can you clearly state your desires to your partner?
Exactly. And if I try the inversion kick and my reality completely falls apart, like if I get fired because I yielded control for one day, or if my partner threatens to leave me because I asserted a single boundary,
then it exposes a massive critical structural flaw in your architecture. It means your success was built on extreme fragility.
wow.
That is the genius of the inversion kick. It proves that true stability isn't about finding one perfect posture and holding it forever. It's about the symmetrical capacity to occupy both the driving and yielding positions in any domain of your life.
But practically speaking, what does this mean for the listener today? Are we supposed to be walking around doing algebraic fractions in our heads during a fight with our spouse?
No, definitely not.
Like, hold on, honey. Let me calculate if I'm x over 1 or 1 over x right now before I respond. That sounds exhausting. It sounds like living entirely in your head.
No, you absolutely do not do the math in the heat of the moment. The math is just the scaffolding.
Okay.
The framework recommends using this in a dedicated, quiet 20-minute Sunday audit.
Sunday audit.
Once a week, you sit down with the journal, you look at the interactions of your past week, and you track your placements of 1. You simply do an inventory. Where was I x over 1 this week? Where was I 1 over x? Where did I refuse to yield when I should have?
So it's a reflective diagnostic.
Exactly. And here's the magic of it. Over time, you don't need the paper anymore. You don't need the explicit equations.
Okay.
Yeah, the math dissolves into a natural reflex. The text calls this state flexible autonomy.
Flexible autonomy.
You develop an embodied, instinctive knowing of when to drive and when to yield. You can shift gears depending on the terrain without ever thinking about the clutch.
So the scaffolding dissolves. We use the heavy mathematical equations to build the building, to force our brains to see the structures. But once the building can stand on its own, we take the metal poles away.
This dissolution of the scaffolding, where the conscious, deliberate, sometimes clunky math becomes an unconscious, fluid mastery of living that is the ultimate endgame of the Meta-Matics curriculum. It means you haven't just memorized the architecture, you have internalized it.
Which naturally brings us to the final frontier of this system.
Right, Chapter Z's endgame.
What happens when these quarter-second transformations, these daily yielding and driving decisions, and these Sunday audits compound over years? Do we just keep doing audits forever? Are we just the accountants of our own lives until we die?
No, thankfully. If you maintain the practice, you cross a threshold into a phase the framework calls saturated synergization.
Saturated synergization.
This is where you develop meta-pattern recognition.
So the system provides a mastery equation for this exact state, doesn't it?
It does.
It expresses mastery, not as a static finish line, but as the infinite accumulation of transformation cycles. But it's not just adding one cycle to the next. Each new cycle's value is multiplied by the compounded amplification of all previous cycles.
Let's translate that math into human experience. It means your growth is no longer linear. It is wildly exponential.
Give me an example of that compounding.
Okay, the discipline and pain tolerance you learned from marathon training 3 years ago. It doesn't just sit in an isolated mental box labeled fitness.
Right.
It acts as a baseline multiplier for the focus you need to start a new business today.
Yeah.
And the emotional resilience you built during a brutal breakup last year acts as a multiplier for your leadership skills tomorrow. Every completed cycle amplifies the capacity of the next one.
And as this compounds, you develop what the text calls structural perception.
Yes.
You stop seeing the messy, emotional surface details of your problems, and you start seeing the underlying math. You have this moment where you realize, wait a minute, the drift pattern in my fitness, tracking how I skip one day of working out, feel guilty, and then suddenly skip 2 weeks, is mathematically identical to the drift pattern in my finances, where I overspend by $20, feel guilty, and then blow my whole budget.
The surface content dumbbells versus dollars is completely different, but the structural equation underneath them is exactly the same.
When you achieve structural perception, you stop trying to solve 10 different surface problems in 10 different exhausting ways. You identify the root architectural flaw that is causing all of them, and you fix it once at the source.
And to explain this depth, the framework introduces a really mind-bending concept, the concept of the handler.
The handler. Okay, walk us through that.
The handler is a beautiful way to visualize nested architecture. Think of a physical space. If a door is stuck, you might think the problem is the door.
Naturally.
But the door is held by a frame. The frame is held by a wall. The wall is held by a room. The room is held by a house. The house is held by the foundation.
So if the door is stuck, and you just keep planting the wood of the door, you might fix it for a day.
Maybe a week.
But if the foundation of the house is shifted, the frame is going to warp again, and the door will get stuck again next week.
Precisely. The ultimate question the architect must ask when faced with any recurring problem is, what holds the holder?
What holds the holder?
What is the deeper, invisible context that is holding your current reality in place? Let's apply this psychologically. Let's say your current reality, your stuck door, is a sudden panic attack before a meeting.
Okay, so the panic attack is the door. What is the frame holding it?
The frame might be a room of chronic, generalized anxiety, but what holds the room? Maybe it's a house of hyper-responsibility.
Like the belief, everything depends on me being 5 steps ahead of what might go wrong, otherwise I'm unsafe.
Exactly. That belief is the foundation holding the house of hyper-responsibility, which holds the room of anxiety, which is holding the stuck door of the panic attack. When you can see all the way down to the foundation, when you can identify the handler of handlers, you have reached saturated synergization. You are no longer fighting the symptoms. You are rewriting the core code.
This fundamentally changes how we view time itself, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The framework explicitly states that in this state of mastery, time is no longer a linear timeline marching endlessly forward. It is a spiral staircase.
It is a profound shift in perspective. Think about how punishing linear time is.
Very punishing.
If time is a straight line, then facing a recurring problem feels like a devastating failure. You think, why am I dealing with this exact same boundary issue with a coworker? I thought I solved my boundary issues in therapy 5 years ago. I've gone backward.
We beat ourselves up because we think we've regressed on the timeline.
Right, but if time is a spiral staircase, you realize you haven't gone backward at all. You are just circling back to the exact same coordinates, the exact same life themes, but you are experiencing them at a higher altitude of mastery.
It's the same X and Y coordinates on the map, the same trigger, the same type of conflict. But you are a floor higher in the Z-axis. You are bringing all of your compounded amplification to the problem this time.
Exactly. And because it is a spiral and you are higher up, you can actually see the curve ahead of you. This entirely demystifies the concept of intuition.
How so?
Intuition isn't magic. It isn't psychic foresight or mystical energy. It is simply recognizing the geometric patterns of the weather system forming ahead of you on the curve of the spiral.
Because you've seen the shape before.
Because you have mathematically mapped the geometry of that exact curve on a lower floor in the past, your brain recognizes the equation up before the events even fully materialize.
It brings everything we've talked about today full circle. Think about the evolution of you, the listener, just through the conceptual arc of this deep dive.
It's quite a journey.
We started by looking at the user, passively reacting to the interface, letting legacy scripts and unexamined delineators run the smart home of their life. Then we evolved into the architect, the person who learns to read the topological maps, who writes this pseudo-algebraic code to diagnose their Tuesday morning slumps, and who intentionally designs the 1/8 overlaps to force integration.
But there's one final evolution.
Right. The person standing at the top of the spiral staircase with saturated synergization is becoming a participant.
A participant is someone who seamlessly inhabits the architecture they build. They aren't constantly auditing or calculating fractions or obsessing over their blueprints anymore.
They don't need the scaffolding.
They have internalized the math. They are co-creating with the broader meta-system, flowing between driving x over 1 and yielding 1 over x with complete embodied trust in their own structural integrity.
Okay, let's take a breath and recap this intense journey. We started by visualizing the root square, realizing that the 1/8 overlapping space where concepts physically embed into each other is where real lived integration happens. We learned the pseudo-algebraic language of reality, how to map our raw iterators being filtered by contextual delineators, and how to use universal operators to diagnose our friction.
Yes.
We explored the practical templates to mathematically calculate compounding achievement, and we proved that relational transformation multiplies exponentially when attunement, safety, and mutual visibility are present.
The R multiplier.
We tested our own psychological symmetry with the inversion kick, making sure we aren't trapped in rigid dominance or endless submission. And finally, we arrived at saturated synergization, where we seek the handler of handlers, time spirals upward, and intuition becomes structural perception.
It is, without a doubt, a complete architectural toolkit for rewriting reality.
So here's the call to action for you listening right now. Grab the remote. The back-end source code of your life is wide open and waiting for input.
You don't have to do it all at once either.
No, you do not have to overhaul your entire existence tomorrow. That's overwhelming. Take just one single template we discussed today. Maybe it's the integration equation, where you simply map your daily consistency against your environmental resistance. Or maybe it's the 20-minute Sunday audit, where you just track your position of 1 to see where you are yielding and where you are driving.
That's a great place to start.
Pick one tool and physically install it into your operating system this week. Watch what happens when you stop reacting to the weather and start building the house.
And as you begin to map your life this week, I want to leave you with one final paradigm-shifting idea that builds on the concept of spiral time.
I love this part. Let's hear it.
If time truly is a spiral, and our intuition is just our ability to sense the architectural patterns forming on the next loop up, consider this. What if the intuition guiding you isn't just pattern recognition?
What else could it be?
What if your future self, the version of you who has already mastered this architecture, who has already survived the resistance, and who has achieved saturated synergization at the top of the spiral, is actually acting as the ultimate delineator?
Oh, wow.
What if that future self is the context actively pulling your current iterator self forward into existence? You aren't just building the future from scratch, hoping it holds together. The future is already there, actively holding the space for you to arrive.
That completely flips the script. You are the architect building the future, but you're also the blueprint pulling yourself forward.
Exactly.
I absolutely love that thought to end on. Thank you so much for taking this incredible deep dive with us to the very edge of Meta-Matics. We will see you in the next one.